So the more evidence, experience, credentials, and knowledge you can bring to that market, the better.
All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the HighLevel Spotlight Sessions. Today, I am joined by Rob Warner of Invisible PPC. Rob, thanks for coming on the show.
Chase, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
So PPC, we don't talk a lot about PPC. I haven't had a lot of, I don't know if I've had any guests on talking about PPC, pay-per-click marketing, Google Ads, right? But I think maybe because it's harder to figure that out, right? I think generally speaking, it's harder to learn Google Ads than it is Facebook ads.
I've heard it's showing some potential. I heard it may take off big in the next few years at some stage. So, it's got promise. Who knows where it's going to go? And I think that's it. I think the short thing is two issues with PPC. One, it scares the hell out of people. Two, it's perceived, it's not the cool kid. Facebook and Instagram and they're the cool kids. Google Ads were the cool kid 5 years ago. Facebook's the cool kid nowadays, and Instagram and TikTok and wherever else it might be. So it kind of fades into the background in conversation, which is kind of insane given that it's kind of the biggest demand-led online advertising platform in the world. But that's what we see with it.
Well, and let's contextualize that, right? If you are working with clients, let's say, who are in an industry where people need something right now, like my sink is broken, so I need a plumber and I'm searching for a plumber near me, you need to be in PPC, right? You need to be bidding for that click.
Quite literally the only place to be. And so, you don't go hoping a Facebook ad's going to pop up. If I scroll long enough, maybe I'll see an ad for a plumber. I mean, that's not happening.
And I think
still no plumbers. So you get that, and the reality is, from anybody who uses either a mobile or a tablet or even a desktop, look at the first page of the Google results. Look at the way it's laid out. You don't see an organic result on the page. You're having to work, either thumb work, scrolling, or mouse work, or whatever, just to see an organic result. So you've already got, if you're on a desktop and you're seeing 4 ads, potentially a map listing or 2 and a map ad, and down below, you're 6 or 7 results down before you even get to fight for an organic spot. And
it's only getting worse, right?
Long term, but they're not good odds.
They're only expanding that too, right? It's getting less and less organic and anywhere that they.
My rule is always really simple. The top half of the page is where they get paid. The bottom half of the page costs them money. So choose on the side where the person that you're working, whose platform you're working on, wants you to win rather than they want you to lose.
That's an interesting way to look at it. So you mentioned that everyone's scared of it. Can you expound on that?
Yeah, so I think historically Google Ads is difficult. There are lots and lots of variables. They change continually, and on a typical year, Google rolls out about 250 changes to Google Ads. Often they are stealthy. Often they don't help advertisers. There was a killer one a couple of weeks back, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point during this conversation. But I think it scares people. CPCs are relatively high. On Facebook, you can get a bazillion clicks for not a lot of money. Conversion rates are relatively tiny. But in Google, where you're paying, say, $150 for a lawyer click, that frightens people. And I understand that completely. And the other thing as well is Google tests slower than Facebook. You can test Facebook in days. You can't test Google in days. So you've got to be prepared to stick with it for 90 days.
Sure.
Prepared to not be optimized for 90 days. In Facebook, I know people in Facebook, and you probably do the same. Damn it, this advert's been running 24 hours. I'm not at CPA goal yet. Turn it off, kill it.
Sure.
That's not how Google works.
Yeah, and that is kind of daunting, right? If you want to get into running ads, but you're like, man, every time somebody clicks something in this campaign, that's $5 or whatever the cost is. If you don't know what you're doing, it's really easy to burn money running at Google Ads.
Oh, completely. Yeah, it's really easy to burn money. But here's the flip side to that. So we see it in our business, and I've seen it in just about every Google Ads agency I've ever come across. client churn is by far the highest in the first 90 days. No matter what a client says to you on day one, I've seen clients bail after a week, after 10 days, after a month, and you don't know what their circumstances were before they started. That's a bad thing if you're an agency. If you're a good agency and you sell well and you sell ethically and you future pace expectations, you win big and your clients win big, because for every day that one of those competitors falls by their wayside because they cancelled after 10 days, 20 days, and they lost their nerve, well, the wall just got higher around your ad campaign, because that's one person less you have to compete with or think about. And meanwhile, your campaign's been learning, it's been optimizing, it's been getting better. So you're up. And every day that happens, the distance between you and your competition just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, until you've got a nice asset in your business and your competitors have to start over again.
I think, yeah, you mentioned a great point, which is setting the expectations, right? And so we used to say, look, with Google Ads, we're going to get you business tomorrow. You're going to have a lead tomorrow, guaranteed. Yep. Now, the cost to acquire that lead might not be ideal, but our goal is to bring that cost down over the next, like you said, 3 months or whatever.
Yeah.
So I do think that's a critical point. So before the show, you mentioned harnessing big data for crazy performance improvements. So where are we with big data in the world of PPC?
So big data in the Google world is really, really interesting. We all know that the platforms, the Googles, the Facebooks, the Amazons of this world, they get to their dominant position because they can run, statistically significant tests in 10 minutes while you eat your breakfast in one corner of their universe, and they've got the answer. Now, if you compare that to, let's say, a dentist, a dentist spending a couple of $1,000s a month on their Google ad campaign, they might get, let's call it 200 clicks. Let's say $10 a click for argument's sake. Now, that $200 clicks might come across 100 different keywords, 20 different ads. Getting statistically significant results in amongst that's really difficult. And if you're working as a kind of lone operator, it's your first dental client or your third dental client, it's really hard to see those patterns. It's really hard to see what works. So we've taken the view in our business that you have to kind of flip the model on its head a little bit, because you have to kind of take a view of how can we collectively work to find out what works across, not at an account level, but an industry level. So we've been working on data sets for the last 12 months. And here's where it gets really interesting. I'm going to tell you something now that might shock you. So we did an analysis of, not all these, by the way, these are not all our campaigns. So we did an analysis of 232 dental accounts, which was about 1,050,000 in ad spend. Now, here's the thing. That 1,050,000 in ad spend generated about 300,000 clicks across 103,000 unique search terms. So think about that. Each term on average gets 3 clicks. Some of them will get far more, some will be one-offs. But here's where this gets crazy. When we looked at those 103,000 clicks, then okay, what of those search terms, what of those 103,000 unique search terms led to an inquiry? Would you put a bet on what the number was? Would you think 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 maybe?
Sure. I mean, I don't even know where to guess.
Try 9,000.
Wow.
Out of 103,000. It roughly equated to $725,000 in spend. Never generated a single inquiry. It's like, holy crap, that's serious. And that's across over 200 accounts. So what we started doing is going, okay, how do you join all that data together to build effectively an industry map and say, if we look at the industry as a whole, what works best? What works? What doesn't work? How do you harness what works? And we applied that model to search terms, but something you guys at HighLevel will be familiar with. You could do the same to landing pages. We roll up landing page tests in the same way. So much as, we spend hours as marketers optimizing landing pages and landing page conversion rates, But actually, there's a whole piece of work, particularly in Google, before you ever even get to that point.
Right.
So approaching both those ends is where the wins live. You can't see, if you've only got one account, you can't see outside the constraints of that account.
Sure.
So what it means is, A, putting all the data together is hugely valuable. It's hugely valuable if you can do it. And I'll be perfectly honest, we've spent 9 months doing it. We've got a PhD mathematician on staff. We've got
And
software
where are you
developers
getting the
on staff.
data? Is this from your clients, or did you pull data from outside resources?
Lots of places, outside data and our clients. So we looked across the whole portfolio, and we do it niche by niche. We've done it for dentists, we've done it for lawyers, we've done it for plumbers, and and we find a similar pattern throughout. I think the best we've ever seen was about 20% of search terms converted. With the lowest we've seen is 6%. And so in that kind of range, that's where Google's profit lives. So if you can cut that off at source, which there are ways to do that, then you can flip a switch and overnight improve a campaign just by finding out what industry levels worked and what hasn't.
Can I press you for a golden nugget that comes to mind that you can throw out to the community here?
Yeah, so I think with this, I'll give you a couple of different things on this one. So number one on this, we find obviously competitors, kill off your competitors. Make sure you're not bidding on competitor terms unless you're doing it absolutely deliberately. Look out for cross-contamination. I'll give you an example of a really good cross-contamination that we saw earlier in the week. So HVAC contractors, they sell air conditioning. That's what they do. They do repairs, they do installs. Now, the thing is, cars have air conditioning installs and repairs also. So if you want to make your domestic or your commercial air conditioning installer campaign better, then go on the internet, buy a list of every car manufacturer, make and model you can find, and put it onto your campaign as a negative. Because you'll see, if you look through any search history for anybody like a plumber, you'll see Range Rover air conditioning, Land Rover air conditioning, Mustang air conditioning, and but they're really hard to spot one at a time because it's one here and one there, and this model and that model, this manufacturer, that one. Buy a list.
It's all wasted money.
Yeah, one list costs you $100, gone forever as a problem. So it's about being smart and about being intelligent and really looking at the highest level you can. The best way to do it, get familiar with a niche. If you've got 10 clients and you've got a plumber, a dentist, a chiropractor, a lawyer, an accountant, an e-com client, your ability to learn the patterns across those clients is near zero. Your principles in how you run your account might be the same, but actually learning what converts and what doesn't, there's no learning there. There's no benefit. Everything starts from zero. Get deep in a niche, because once you're in a niche, second account, you know more than the first. The third, you know more than the second. By the time you get 10, you know what's going on. And it's a much easier client win because you've now got case studies, you've got evidence, you've got data. And all of those things layered on together make it so much easier. I'm sure it's a message you preach within your community. Make sure that you've got some kind of specialization. The market right now, and as we're in the sort of second part of this COVID experience, which is just a crazy time for everybody, we've seen, and I imagine something you might have seen as well, is buyers are back in the market right now. But not only have people who were pausing and panicking earlier in the year come back into the market, people who've never advertised before are in the market and they're buying. People who, the guys who go, oh, I tried online marketing once, my agency burned me, I got screwed. We've all got that. We've all been to meetings and met that guy.
Yeah,
that guy's in the market as well. And they're buying along with the new guys who've never advertised. So in the market right now, as we see it, is actually bigger than it's ever been in terms of end clients. But you've got a whole bunch of nervous people out there. They all need it to work, and they need it to work now. So the more evidence, experience, credentials, and knowledge you can bring to that market, the better. So going back to what I said a minute ago about having the specialism, you absolutely have to have that specialism, because otherwise, why should they take you over anybody else?
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I feel like, look, every agency wants to offer PPC, but like we talked about, it's really hard to learn it, right? So it's really hard to
Yeah,
grow an internal PPC specialist. So I think most agencies have some sort of partnership when it comes
yeah.
to PPC. And I can't tell you how many different PPC specialists, head of PPCs we went through at the agency that I used to run. It was probably yearly. We would, switch to somebody new because the clients weren't happy with the results, and each PPC person does things differently, right? Like we're not even going to go into um, skags or, some people
Yeah.
it's the only way to do it, and some people it's the worst way to do it, right? So and if you're not an expert, how do you know which expert is right? So, what
Yeah.
advice would you have for an agency who's like, look, I need to sell PPC, I just don't know who or where to find somebody that's going to make it work for me?
So building in house is really hard. Um, if you're building in house, it's a really, really hard thing to do. You can do it, but you've got to be prepared to invest. As you've said, you will turn over staff. They will change. And one thing I always hate is to have one person's opinion, you know,
Mm.
because if you've got one expert in your business, you've no idea if they're good or not. All
Right.
you know is the feedback you get, and sometimes you get yelled at, and other times you don't. So if you don't get yelled at, this guy's okay. If I get yelled at, he's not okay. That's your only yardstick for measuring. So to my mind, the simplest way to do it is contract out, whether that's through freelancers, in which case get more than one, because having just one kind of sucks. Because at some point they will ghost you.
Mhm.
And when that happens, then expect a world of pain. Um, or you can use a professional outsourcing white label firm. And we've got one, you've got it in house, HighLevel as well. So there are places out there that have got trusted pair of hands. And the thing I always look for, and the thing we sell about ourselves, and I don't want to make it sound like a sales pitch, the one thing we sell is we have proven campaigns. We know
Mhm.
the data. We know we've got a list of 80 markets where we know the numbers. We know how to turn a campaign on that market and make it work. We know the landing pages, the ads, the offers. So that's a huge advantage in terms of credentializing yourself. But there are other people who have skills as well. The key thing is,
Well, that's
unless you're really prepared to invest for the long haul, doing it in house is a pain in the backside.
right. And so when you get to that point, what you just described is the dream scenario, right? Because if I come to you and say, hey, can you run PPC for my clients? And you say, sure, not only can I do that, but you work in the dental niche, right? Here are the numbers. We are confident that we can generate free teeth
Yeah,
whitening leads in the average market for $3 or less. Well, now that's so easy to sell when you can
yeah.
confidently know what the numbers are going to be,
Well,
right? You can go
yeah.
to
I
the
mean,
dentist and say,
we
hey.
provide our partners with we provide our partners things like case studies,
Mhm.
with the numbers, with the training, with the dashboards, like the dashboards, the call tracking, all the kind of stuff that needs to happen. That needs to happen. And I often describe it. It's like starting the 100 meters race at the Olympics on the 60-meter line. It doesn't
Mhm.
guarantee you're going to win, but it puts you in a pretty strong position.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, it's pretty easy to sell when you get to that point, and it sounds like you guys have that data for a lot of industries, which is pretty interesting. So where would people go if they were interested in talking to you about having you guys run their PPC?
So I think there's a couple of things they can do and talk to us. So you mentioned that we're Invisible PPC. So we have a free training, Invisible PPC. We call it Smart Niche. It's designed for anybody who's thinking about running it. It gives you all the cost estimates per market. It gives you how to manage your client, how to smoothly onboard your client, how to set expectations for the first few months, and even we call it the Sleep Well Guide, which is kind of all the dumb questions that you think are dumb but aren't really dumb to your client that they're going to ask you. Here's the answers to them all, so you can kind of just kick them away and don't lose any sleep over them. So that's one way. It's completely free. It's at invisibleppc.com, I think, /PPC Smart Niche. Or just click the link off the website. That's the simplest way. We don't charge for that because we want educated partners who at least have what I call a kind of used car salesperson level of knowledge. You need to be able to explain to a potential buyer the difference between a Ferrari and a Toyota. You don't need to be able to change the engine. And if you can get that from the training, that's where you need to be to engage a good relationship. The
Wow.
other thing that people can do, just as a tiny aside, if for those people who are running their own ad campaigns internally, um, With the big data solution I described to you before, we're just about to roll out our software for that in beta, so agencies who don't use people like us, which is most people to be fair, um, can take advantage of that technology and that ability to take industry-wide data and kick the ass of the competition. So if anybody
Wow,
wants
that's
that, I
pretty
can provide
interesting.
a link to that too.
Okay, awesome. Wow, Rob. Well, that sounds pretty interesting. So, um, before we go, is there a flip side to big data? I think we talked about maybe some gotchas to look out for if does big data ever lead you in the wrong direction?
Yeah, completely. So the thing with big data is this: it's really easy to get caught up in bad data. If you aren't tracking everything about the way your clients are behaving, and you're not tracking conversions, you're not tracking phone calls, you're not tracking bounces, then you can make some pretty bad decisions very, very quickly. So I guess the two bad things with it is one, do the job properly, track absolutely anything that moves, because that's how we learn. And number two, don't ignore it, because if you're ignoring it, someone's going to come and eat your lunch.
I love it. All right, Rob. Thanks so much for coming on. If you guys want to learn more for Rob or reach out to him, again, it's invisibleppc.com. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Chase, absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me. It's been good fun.
Thanks for staying up over there. And thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you on the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.